From his splendid record of wins against top-level fights to his impressive boxing and submission skills, here are all the reasons why Nick Diaz is a better fighter than his younger brother Nate. Starting with the fact that he's a faster starter than Nate. There's a number of reasons why Nick's widely regarded as a formidable fighter in the sport of mixed martial arts, and one of them is this. If we know one thing about Nate, it's the fact that he's a much slower starter than his older bro. The way Nick fights is truly something. He meets his opponent in the middle of the octagon and quickly tries to establish dominance by jabbing and firing off deadly combinations. His moves are simply extraordinary.
Hoping for the hammer of Thor to drop again.
Well, Diaz has worked boxing with the likes of Andre Ward. Oh, uppercut! And that Jackson drops Arofskas!
Nate, on the other hand, has a different technique, which isn't quite as effective. The younger Diaz brother waits for his opponent to establish their offense. He uses the first few rounds to understand and make sense of his opponent's game plan, and spends the other half of the fight playing catch-up. I mean, it's not a bad technique, to be honest, but it can sometimes blow up in his face. Nick is confident enough in his skills that he doesn't need to wait to decipher his opponent's next moves. And even if his opponents surprise him at times, Nick can easily take a punch better than Nate.
That could be because he's got experience. Why would I say
Combination. Diaz does
There have been times when Nate has been knocked down by his opponent and struggled to get back to his feet. Nick, on the flip side, has never had to face something like this. He's never been knocked out cold and can usually take even the most powerful of punches in stride. In fact, he can absorb his opponent's hits and continue to move on forward like a champ. I mean, there's no one quite like Nick Diaz after all. Back in 2011, Nick had a showdown with Paul Daly at the Strikeforce fight. He absorbed thunderous punches from Daly and never once even moved backwards. That is just the kind of intensity with which Nick fights. It's insane. His fighting skills are no less.
Daly falling is in trouble. 11 seconds. Diaz going in for the kill. And it's over.
Nick's definitely more of an accurate striker than his younger brother. Although, if I'm being honest, both the Diaz brothers are pretty good at striking. They make use of their long reach and limb length to strike their opponents from a fair distance. Between the two of them, though, Nick's definitely better. His strikes are more accurate, and he makes use of a less chaotic approach while landing his kicks and punches. Speaking of his punches, Nick is better at counterpunching than Nate too. In fact, all of his boxing skills are way more polished than his little bros. Nick is known far and wide for his ability to throw a powerful counterpunch. I think we all remember the time that Diaz sent Robbie Lawler crashing down with a well-timed counterpunch the very first time they met. It was pretty amazing, not gonna lie. One of Nick's best weapons in the octagon is his ability to quickly get out of range while simultaneously landing a looping counterhook. He's pretty great at it. He also has another wonderful skill. Nick is effortlessly good at blasting his opponents with powerful body combinations. His striking repertoire includes the ability to gradually break down his opponent's defenses by landing enviable strikes.
Dismissed with that straight kick to move, and then nice body shot by Condit. Like this. Yeah, that's punches and bunches.
His rips to the body are just insane. He's shown off his incredible body punching skills quite a good few times. Even though Nate's not bad at hits to the body, Nick is the clear winner of the two. He even showcased this ability in his fights against Cyborg Santos and Frank Shamrock, both of which he won, by the way. That is pretty impressive, don't you think? But what's even more impressive is how good Nick's endurance is. You see, Nate's proven a bunch of times that he can go on strong for the entire duration of a fight, but the older Diaz brother is simply too skilled and prepared when it comes to endurance. Nick literally spends days doing endurance training. The guy spends hours running, swimming, and biking. He takes every ounce of energy he has to do cardio strength training. I mean, literally, nobody does it like Nick Diaz. The man is a beast. He's become a cornerstone for endurance prep. In fact, his triathlon-style training has become pretty popular among fighters. Don't get me wrong, Nate's no slouch when it comes to cardio either. He's shown his athletic skills and elite pace on more than one occasion, but Nick is definitely better. I mean, even Nate can't argue that his older older brother taught him everything he knows about getting into shape. The older Diaz's training has also allowed him to exhibit true knockout power. Between Nick and Nate, who has the best knockout punch? Only one name comes to mind, and it's not Nate Diaz. Nick owns 13 wins by knockout. Nate, on the other hand, has had only 4. The older Diaz brothers' tendency to brawl has given us a highlight reel full of his opponents crumpling to the ground. He's just that good.
Hammer fist to the body by Diaz. Looks for the armbar. It's over. Diaz retains the strike force.
It's like Nick can change the course of a fight with a single punch. He depends on inflicting enough damage before a final shot to the chin or the ribs to end his opponent. It's a bit like chopping down on a gigantic tree with a bunch of well-placed blows from an axe. I mean, the final blow will bring the tree down, but all the blows leading up to that count too. Nick is pretty smart when it comes to fights. He uses his strategic brilliance to anticipate his opponent's every next move, and his attitude is simply deadly. Both the Diaz brothers have a kill me to stop me attitude. Nick walks his opponents down and then begins the fight. Nate too is capable of forming a game plan, but it's the older Diaz brother who takes the cake here. You know what else makes Nick such a brilliant fighter? He isn't a traditional southpaw. Many MMA fans haven't caught on yet that the older Diaz brother is a natural orthodox fighter who opens southpaw by choice. This means that the hand he uses to lead is packed with power and the flexibility you develop with everyday use. Nate, on the other hand, is a traditional southpaw, so his power hand is in the back. Nick possesses a tapping jab that interrupts his opponent's rhythm. His jab comes from his power hand, which can literally rattle his foes if he lands too many. Once he catches his opponents with a power shot, he can keep them down with simple jabs until an opening presents itself. Nate instead uses his jab more traditionally as a guide for his left hand. It stings, but the impact just isn't the same. So what's the verdict? Nick has the advantage of size and power over his younger brother. Nate is pretty well-rounded with his striking approach, but Nick's ability to sling punches with on-point accuracy is just something else.
It's Nick Diaz in the long black trunks. Diaz is a character. You need these kinds of characters in mixed martial arts.
Nick's one of the best game planners around. He can adapt to every situation inside the cage and always finds a way to win. The older Diaz brother also has the ability to end a fight by making the other fighter submit at pretty much any point. That's what makes him such a dangerous athlete. Yes, both the brothers possess equal skills in some departments, but when you look at the bigger picture, it's Nick who comes out as the clear winner. That makes sense though. Nick taught his brother literally everything that he knows. In a fantasy fight between the two brothers, it might be close, but eventually Nick would win as his experience and his skills would definitely overshadow Nate's determination. There you have it. That's why Nick Diaz is better than his brother Nate Diaz.